Hello and welcome once again to another episode of Humans of EdTech, and today we are going to start discussing one by one in this particular video one school of thought with respect to education, with respect to psychology. So let's quickly jump into this. We are going to look at behaviorism and the impact that this particular school of thought from a psychology perspective has had its impact on the edtech as a field, education as a field, teaching learning as a field. So let's quickly jump into this. What should you expect today? You should look at understanding what is behaviorism, how the teaching learning process works over here, impact on e-learning, and specifically impact on the adult learning, impact on e-learning, and specifically how the grown-ups take to it in the online environment, the more contemporary part of it. Awesome. So what is behaviorism? I'm sure you must have all heard at some point in time about the Pavlov's dog. Ivan Pavlov, essentially a very well established name in the psychology field, came up with an experiment where every time he had a bell that was ringing, a bone was presented to the dog and the dog would start to salivate. Bell was ringing, bone was presented, dog would start to salivate. Slowly but surely they took the bone away, the bell was ringing and the dog would yet salivate. The dog kind of had established in his mind a causal relationship between the bell ringing, the bone coming to him, and him starting to salivate, which is nothing but a biological response. So that at its very simple heart and core is what behaviorism all about. Again, these are the people who have done a lot of work. Watson, Skinner, and Pavlov. They have proposed, written extensively about different specific subschools, methodologies in behaviorism. They would what you call as behaviorist psychologists, and they have done a much larger. They have left a very large body of work. I encourage that you have a look at it, but again, I'm just going to touch on behaviorism and specifically the impact on the teaching learning part of it. So quickly jumping on this, behaviorism is where all the behaviors that are acquired via conditioning, this is a word that you're going to hear again and again. Now the key thing to note over here is the behavior that is observable, something that you can see from an external perspective, from outside it is observable. Something that is an internal state or stage of an individual is not something that is explicitly modeled or considered over here. Emotions, moods, everything is kind of subjective. So now let's look at this. How is this going to impact? So behaviors are influenced, are driven, are modeled basis of certain external stimuli. So that's what this particular thing essentially says. And essentially a lot of background journey perspective is kind of cut out. So behaviorism is possibly one of the introductory school of thoughts which definitely has a lot of applications, but this is essentially the broad outline. I don't want to get too deep into this, but this is what we are looking at. Quickly jumping ahead. So how the teaching learning process works. So there is a stimulus. Because of that particular stimulus there is a response that happens, and if you give the stimulus again and again, the response will come again and again, and by conditioning, by memorization, by internalizing, you will essentially get this particular thing. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these things at different points in time, what we typically call as reinforcements. So if you do something that is desirable, you get a positive reinforcement. You essentially get some sort of a prize, you essentially get some sort of an encouragement. So that is the positive reinforcement. Or if you do something that is not desirable, you essentially get what is a negative reinforcement. So these can be called as punishments also. I don't think I'm offering a 100% clear or a very classical definition. A Wikipedia article is going to give you like a 2-level decision tree over here, but this is what we're talking about. We're talking about encouraging things what are right and asking the individual to do more of it, and discouraging them from not doing what is not desirable. In a nutshell, it focuses on the observable, measurable, outward behavior. It is definitely scientific and replicable. The dog is a testimony to it, absolutely. And it is very much used for modeling the behaviors of the people in online, offline, and all sorts of environments. Of course, there are certain things that this particular school of thought chooses not to look at, that is with respect to biological influences, so on and so forth, which we will look at in the upcoming sessions. How does it impact the learning component, the e-learning component? Definitely anything that has to be internalized by doing it again and again, by developing a muscle memory, it has to be a function of repetition. So this is something that is at play subliminally. If you want to have the gamification part of it, which is specifically encouraging or discouraging people from doing specific things, you're definitely using behaviorism at some level. Quiz, measurement, giving people the feedback, positive recognition, all of these things use behaviorism in some form or the other. There are specific techniques that people use with respect to the behaviorist psychology. So now coming to the specific interfaces, if you're doing classification, if you're putting all the squares in one bucket and all the circles in another bucket, and you're doing some sort of a online drag and drop environment, whether it is on a tablet or an online interface, you're actually using a discrimination technique over here, and that again comes from the behavioristic psychology, Behaviorism school of thought. So whether you are doing a project which has 5 steps that are involved and you do all of them successively and all of them leads to completion of projects, so you are chaining 5 assignments to complete one project, that again comes from this particular school of thought. A lot of these things, essentially what you see in your world outside, all the e-learning platforms, LMSs, different features have their impact, have their basis in behaviorism. Awesome. I hope this serves out as a very gentle introduction to what behaviorism is. This is a topic that can be discussed for at least a half a semester course. What I just wanted to do over here is to introduce to you what is behaviorism as a school of thought and its impact on the teaching learning methodology in the modern EdTech online space, especially in the higher ed, where you're talking to a lot of grown-up learners. I hope this answers some part of it. Stay tuned. We are going to look at least 4 other schools of thoughts after this particular session. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you soon. Follow us on our website shilotri.com, that's right here, and also on LinkedIn. Bye.